The police in the UK are being called out to schools to investigate children for calling each other names. You can see why we're here on Secrets, because I couldn't say that on my main channel without a slight grin. That is as ridiculous as it sounds, but it's happening here in the UK. So welcome back. We're here on Secrets, hence the somewhat more casual attire. We might call this Off the Clock, but I don't want to steal Brett Cooper's name for a show, so if you could come up with a decent name for that, I might adopt that for these kind of shows here on Secrets. But please do subscribe below if you want my personal views on these things, because I'll tell you at the outset, I think this is utterly and absolutely ridiculous, for reasons I will give in this video, which is based on my own personal opinion. So let's go to the full credit of where this came from. Good Morning Britain. I will link the full video below. I'm not going to play all of it because I don't want any sort of copyright claims against me, but I will play enough of it for you to get the idea. You can go and watch the full video yourself, and I'm going to give you my views on it because I think those are already clear, but let's take a listen first of all. I'll mute myself.
He said another student smelled like fish, also investigated as a non-crime hate incident. How are we policing children's behaviour in the classroom?
Hello, good morning. What I would say is I've read the same reports that you've seen, but that's the only knowledge that I have of those exact incidents that were reported. And I think it is important to understand that there can sometimes be a wider context. Perhaps there is, perhaps there isn't, but I really wouldn't know on the basis of some elements of a report in a newspaper. I do know, however, that behaviour in the classroom is an increasing concern of teachers who say that it's making them consider whether they want to remain in the classroom, whether they want to remain as teachers.
To the point that they call the police?
Well,
to the point that they call the police?
Well, if there are serious incidents, and sadly there can...
And here comes the dodge. She doesn't answer the question, and she goes on to say, if there are serious incidents, then they might call the police. Now, obviously, there are some incidents where they ought to call the police, such as incidents where I have personally heard of students throwing chairs across the classroom or going up to a teacher with a knife, for example. Those would be incidents that they really ought to call the police. Now, I'm not going to play the full video here. You can go and watch that for yourself. But suffice to say, she refused to comment on that one particular incident where one student said another smelt like fish, and they called the police to investigate it as a non-crime hate incident. Now, I'm sorry how abrupt and blunt this sounds, but that's ridiculous. Calling the police because students are calling each other names is utterly ridiculous. I've personally been involved with a number of cases to do with schools, and the police in those cases, they were far more serious cases than this. But the police in those cases, suffice to say, were not really interested in what was going on. They just said it's a matter for the school, even though there were some fairly serious allegations being made here. The police were generally not that interested. So to now hear in the news that police are being called out to children as young as 9, I do think that's a bit silly. I think that's a bit of a waste of police time. That really should be a school thing, and bringing in the parents to assist with that, because that's how we did it when I was a child at school. If someone was misbehaving at school, the teachers would call the parents in and there would be a punishment, and the child would hopefully not do that again. And that's how children learned that what bad behavior was and that they shouldn't do that. Now, of course, some children go on and spiral out of control, or they don't have the school doesn't have the support from parents at home, and therefore they can't discipline the student properly, or worse still, some cases that I've heard of, going back to my voluntary days as a police officer many years ago now. One true story. We delivered a child back to the parents' house. This was us working as police. Delivered the child back to the parents' house, having been caught doing something wrong. They'd been let off with a caution, and the parent hit the child there and then. Obviously, we had to speak to the parents about that. But the parent hit the child there and then and said, and I quote verbatim because I remember it to this day, they said, "That's not for doing X, that's for getting caught." Those were the words of the parents, and I respectfully suggest that that is where the problem starts. I suggest that a lot of these problems start at home. However, the reverse is true. When the school has the assistance of the parents and the support of the parents to discipline the children, You don't need police, particularly when it's just children calling each other names. Now, don't misunderstand for a moment. I don't condone children calling each other names. They shouldn't do that. That is wrong, and parents and teachers alike should stamp that out because it shouldn't happen. But call the police, they should not. The police should be reserved for actual crime that they need to investigate and which may lead to prosecution. Now, there might be the odd occasion where something serious has happened and only a bit of a warning from the police might do to frighten that child into not behaving like that again in the future. That, potentially, I could see some movement in, but not for calling each other names, surely. I'm open to persuasion if you think that I'm wrong on this and you've got another view and you think that this is a good use of police time and that it really ought to be done like that. But I've worked with psychologists, I've worked with social workers, I've worked with hostels, all sorts of organizations that provide support to lots of people. And I've heard some horrendous stories where the police just don't get involved because they say it's a matter for whichever organization is involved, be it the school, be it a hostel or whatever. And the police generally have previously said that it's for them to deal with and they have their own rules. And particularly schools, they have their own rules and discipline and everything else. They ought to be dealing with it, not bringing in the police, unless there is a serious crime. Now, in this interview here, which you can go and watch, there is an infinite deflection and refusal to really answer the question as to whether or not this is a ridiculous example. One saying another student smells like fish. Now, they shouldn't do that. I don't condone that. I don't think anyone would like that and support that, hopefully at least. But they shouldn't be calling the police for it. But that is the situation we are in at the moment. So this is why a lot of my videos recently are focusing on what's going on with free speech, who's being policed and accused of doing what, because this is where we're going. Now, if we've got children as young as 9 being investigated because the police are called into the school for name calling, I think we're on a slippery slope downwards. And I think we really do need to raise awareness about this and bring it to a halt. So there it is. That's what's going on. Let me know your views in the comment section below. Make sure you like the video and subscribe. And let me know a name for this sort of segment of show here on Secrets. I can't call it Off the Clock, although I like the idea. And I'm sure she probably wouldn't mind me stealing it for my show. But I'd like to go with something unique. Come up with a name for me. What can we call this? This is Black Belt Barrister Off the Clock as such. But I don't want to steal the name. So let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.